it comes together in about 15 minutes. It's really, really simple one-pot thing. Did I say one pot? No, two-pot thing. Or if you're making your own dashi, three-pot thing, sorry. Hey everyone, I'm Kenji López-Alt. I'm a cookbook author and NYTCooking.com contributor, and we are going to be making Niku Udon. It is a classic Japanese home cooking dish, so made with thinly shaved beef, simmered with onions, really, really simple. This dish is one of my family's favorites. My daughter actually is now a vegetarian, so we don't do it as much anymore, but before my daughter became vegetarian, this is one of our favorite dishes to make at home because it's just a few simple ingredients. It comes together real quick. We're gonna be making our own dashi, our own stock here. You can use powdered dashi though, and if you do that, it comes together in about 15 minutes. All right, so the first step is to make the dashi. Dashi is a really basic Japanese stock. It's made with two ingredients, if you don't include the water. And then this is kombu, so sea kelp. We're gonna throw that in there. The water is cold, and we're gonna bring it up to a simmer. Some people will take the kombu and let it steep cold in the water for, even up to like a day. You could do that and then slowly bring it up to a boil. You'll extract a little bit more flavor that way. Generally, I don't bother. I just bring it up to a boil in cold water. And then once that water reaches a boil, we're going to be adding this, which is katsuobushi. Katsuobushi is skipjack tuna that has been salted, fermented, smoked, dried until it has the texture of like plywood almost, of like balsa wood. And then you shave it, just the same way that you would shave a piece of balsa wood. So it comes out looking like sawdust. Well, it doesn't taste like sawdust. It tastes really smoky and umami, so it has a lot of that really concentrated glutamic acid and inosinic acid that you find in seafood. That combined with the sea kelp is what gives dashi, Japanese flavors, that really deep umami flavor. Our kombu is almost at a boil. What you don't want to do is let this come to a rolling boil and just sit there. What happens is that will over-extract from the kombu in the same way that like if you over brew your tea, it becomes bitter. The same thing's gonna happen here. You're gonna pull out these flavors that you don't necessarily want. The bonito flakes, you definitely do not want to boil those. It'll turn your dashi sort of cloudy and really bitter tasting. So really, we're just gonna try and brew this almost like making a tea. I also got a pot of water going on the side because we're gonna be cooking our udon noodles in there. One pot for the dashi to make. We have a pan to cook our beef, and then we have a pot for the noodles in there. So this is a three-pot dish, a real simple one, but it is a three-pot dish if you're gonna be making your own dashi from scratch. All right, our dashi's coming to a boil here, so we're just gonna shut it off completely. And then I'm gonna add my katsuobushi. What I wanna do is make sure it's submerged. And then I'm just let this sit aside and steep, just like tea, for about 5 or 10 minutes. And in the meantime, I'm gonna start getting my other ingredients together. Scallions, scallion whites, sugar. This is Japanese soy sauce, shoyu. Mirin, which is a sweet Japanese wine. Some sake. And then we're gonna add beef. So this is really thinly shaved ribeye. You can use any kind of thinly shaved beef. What I would recommend is you go to the Asian market, look in the shabu shabu section. You're usually gonna find thinly shaved beef like this. If you can't, you can also check out a Western market and look for meat that's intended for Philly cheesesteaks. It's essentially the same thing. There's two ways that you can slice an onion when you're cutting it. You could slice it, what I would call, parallel to the equator of the onion, so into the way you would say like cut onion rings, that way. When you slice it that way, you end up with a texture that I find doesn't actually break down very well as it simmers, so the onion pieces actually stay a little bit too intact and they get these little crunchy bits. I much prefer slicing my onion for dishes like this the other way, so from pole to pole, and you end up with an onion texture that the onion kind of melts into it a little bit more easily. So that's why I like to do it that way. It also changes the flavor of the onion just a little bit. It results in onion flavor that's a little bit milder. So instead of getting that really super pungent onion flavor, you get some of the sweeter flavors and some of the more aromatic flavors that way. That's gonna go right in as well. It's gonna steep for another couple minutes, but just to get this going, I'm gonna pop my strainer in here, dip in there with a ladle, and we're gonna grab about a cup of that dashi and put it in here. Now all we do is simmer this. Sometimes this beef comes rolled or clumped up. I'm just trying to poke it apart with my chopsticks. You can use a fork, of course. With a dish like this also, your goal is not to try and keep the beef in sort of intact pieces. It all kind of ends up shredding and falling apart, and that's all fine. It should all have this kind of rustic texture to it, home-cooked quality. Our dashi has been steeping for about 5 to 10 minutes now. So all I'm going to do is strain it out. Yeah, it's got like a really nice smoky, savory quality to it. Just give it a little gentle push to get all the excess out. What you can do now is you can add more water to it and make what's called a second dashi, a dashi that would be used more for cooking as opposed to a soup like this. You can make a second dashi. Of course, you can just discard it if you don't want to bother making a second dashi. And this is going to go right back in the pot. All right, our beef and onions are close to done. These are fresh Japanese udon noodles. So Japanese udon are sort of thick wheat noodles. You can buy them fresh or frozen. You can also get them dried, but I prefer getting the fresh stuff for this style of noodle. So this is water that is at a boil. Unlike Italian pasta, Japanese udon, the dough is usually pretty heavily salted, so you don't really need to salt your water separately. You can add a little bit of salt if you really feel like it. This is actually completely unsalted water right now. Season our broth. So this is just the dashi. All we're going to do is season it with some soy sauce and some more mirin. As with a lot of Japanese home-cooked meals, this is going to have a sort of really balanced, slightly sweet and very savory flavor profile. Check for seasoning. Sometimes you want a little more soy sauce, sometimes you want a little more mirin. That tastes pretty good to me. All right, I'm also going to taste the beef for seasoning. Yep, real good. So you're looking at this and you might think like, oh my God, you're just boiling your beef. In Western cooking, we rely a lot on browning to give you those sort of deep umami flavors. With a lot of Japanese cooking, you don't get those flavors from browning the meat. You get those deep umami flavors from long fermented sauces. So things like soy sauce, that's what's going to give you really that rich umami flavor that you would typically get in Western cooking from browning your beef. So you'll find a lot of dishes that are just simmered, that really sort of focus on this kind of tender texture. All the flavor gets built in through sauces and fermented things like that. Let's check our noodles. Those are done. All right, so I'm going to construct a bowl here. Finally, this is shichimi togarashi. So togarashi is Japanese chili flakes. Shichimi togarashi is Japanese chili flakes that have 7 flavors. Shichimi means 7. So it's basically seasoned chili flakes. It's got things like, what does it have? Black sesame seeds, cardamom, usually orange peel, maybe some seaweed in there. I don't remember all the things, honestly. But you can buy it as is. All right, are we ready to give this a taste? Like classic comfort food for me. These are the flavors I grew up eating. By the way, if you don't want udon, this topping is really great over like a bowl of rice. You just get a rice bowl, plop this on top, and you get this kind of wet seasoned rice that's really comforting, and the beef mixes in there. So really nice balance, very umami, a little bit sweet, savory, a little bit salty. All those flavors are really nicely balanced. And like a lot of Japanese food, it's sort of these sort of subtle mixes of flavors that I find very, very comforting. If you want this recipe, any of my recipes, or a bunch of other great recipes, nytcooking.com.